The cursor flashed on the screen like a silent beat, accompanying Dante Moreau's restrained breathing. He adjusted his headphones, shutting out the city noise that seeped in through the open window. He was one step away from something big. The terminal displayed the command line with the latest decrypted data packets. For years, Dante had hacked into government systems, private corporations and secret databases. But this was different. The architecture of the firewall was something he had never seen before. The layers of security were meticulously constructed, as if they were hiding something that couldn't be seen. He had broken through all the barriers one by one, and now the file was there, waiting to be opened. Its name: Project Janus. Dante hesitated for a second, not out of fear of being caught. He prided himself on never having been traced, but out of a nagging intuition. He knew that certain secrets were best left buried. But curiosity had always been his curse. He typed in the final commands and pressed enter. The file opened. Lines of text paraded across the screen. Reports, tables, encrypted videos, names of scientists he had never heard of. He scrolled down, his eyes devouring every word. Project Janus was created to explore dimensional fissures detected at specific points on the planet. The initial aim was to monitor and record the activity of these anomalies. However, technological advances have made it possible to open controlled passages to parallel realities. Dante frowned. Interdimensional travel. That was ridiculous. He read on, feeling a chill run down his spine. Initial tests were successful. Agents went through the rifts and returned with consistent data. However, unusual patterns began to emerge. Some entities managed to cross back. Some were not human. The air around Dante seemed to feel heavy. Entities. He scrolled down the page and clicked on a video attachment. The screen went black for a few seconds before the flickering image of a room lit by fluorescent light appeared. Two men in lab coats stood next to a one-way mirror. The video was silent, but automatic subtitles displayed the conversation. Scientist 1. He doesn't respond to stimuli. Since he came back, he hasn't said a word. Scientist 2. What about the tests? Any physiological changes? Scientist 1. No. But, watch. The image changed to a cell where a man was sitting. He stared at the wall, motionless. One of the scientists entered the room and put a hand on his shoulder. It was then that the man moved. Dante felt his stomach turn. The man in the video turned his head, but his eyes took a second longer to follow, as if they were controlled by something independent, as if they didn't belong to him. The video cut out abruptly. Dante's screen froze. The mouse pointer didn't respond. Then, suddenly, everything went out. His heart raced. He tried restarting the system, but to no avail. Then a sound broke the silence. Plim. A new email in his inbox. The sender was unknown. The subject chilled his blood. You opened what you shouldn't have. The air in the room seemed thicker, carried by an invisible presence. Dante felt a shiver run up his spine as he stared at the dark computer screen. The light from the monitor reflected in his wide eyes, the email pulsing before him like a silent warning. His first instinct was to delete the message, to pretend he'd never seen it, but something inside him knew it was too late. With trembling fingers, he clicked on the email. The message contained just one line. Coordinates: 40.712.8-74.0060 tomorrow. 2:37 a.m. Come alone. Dante's heart hammered in his chest. The coordinates pointed to a location in Manhattan, but why that exact time? And who had sent it? He looked at the window. The street outside looked ordinary, lit by street lamps and the occasional glow of distant headlights, but then he noticed. There was a man standing on the sidewalk across the street. Tall, wearing a dark suit, hands in his pockets, completely static, and looking directly at him. The clock struck 2:30 a.m. when Dante arrived at the indicated location. The cold cut into his skin, and the normally vibrant city looked like a desert of concrete and shadows. The coordinate led him to an abandoned warehouse in southern Manhattan. The windows were covered in dust and dirt, and only a flickering light bulb illuminated the entrance. He hesitated before entering. Something inside him was screaming at him to get out of there, but he was already too involved to turn back. The door creaked as he pushed it open. The interior was spacious and dark, except for a circle of light coming from an open laptop in the center of the cement floor. Dante stepped forward and a voice echoed from the shadows. "You took your time." He turned quickly and his heart stopped. The man in the suit was standing there, watching him with eyes that seemed wrong. The man in the suit moved forward slowly, keeping his gaze fixed on Dante. There was something wrong about him, something that made Dante's skin crawl, but he didn't back down. "You want answers," the man's voice echoed through the dark warehouse. "Then come with me." Dante hesitated, but followed the man down a narrow corridor that led to a rusty iron door. The stranger typed a sequence of numbers into a hidden panel in the wall, and the door opened with a mechanical click. Behind it, an underground elevator. Dante exchanged a suspicious glance with the man before entering. The door closed, and the elevator descended through a long metal tunnel. A claustrophobic silence filled the room until the structure stopped with a jolt. The doors opened, revealing a secret facility. Screens flashed with encrypted data. Scientists hurried about, and in the center of the room was a large metal circle, pulsing with a blue light. Dante recognized it immediately. "A dimensional portal." "That's why you're here," said the man in the suit. "Because now that you know, there's no turning back." Dante felt the weight of the decision before him. The only way to understand everything was to cross over. But what was on the other side? The air around the portal vibrated with an almost palpable energy. Dante felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end as he stared at the pulsating metallic circle. The man in the suit stepped forward and looked directly at him. "You have to cross over. It's the only way to understand." Dante took a deep breath. Something inside him was screaming at him to back off, but the promise of answers was too tempting. He closed his eyes for a moment and, without thinking twice, took a step forward. The impact was instantaneous. A sensation of free fall overtook his body. Lights and shadows danced around him. Voices whispered incomprehensible words, and a crushing pressure seemed to want to tear him out of existence. Then it all stopped. Dante opened his eyes. He was no longer in the warehouse. He was in a place that defied all logic. The sky above him was a whirlwind of impossible colors. Buildings floated without apparent support, and creatures of indescribable shapes walked in an environment that oscillated between reality and nightmare. He tried to move, but something was wrong. His body felt heavy, as if it were being pulled in several directions at once. Then a shadow approached. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was familiar. Dante turned and froze. He was looking at himself. Dante stared at his own reflection. Or rather, something that appeared to be him, but wasn't. The version of him that stood in front of him had an empty look, a strange glint in his eyes. It was like a broken mirror of his own essence. "What's going on?" Dante muttered, taking a step back. The other Dante smiled. "You've crossed the line. You're now in the domain of the reflection." Before Dante could react, he felt a crushing pressure around his body, as if something was trying to drag him into the other version of himself. He struggled, but his strength seemed drained. The reality around him flickered, as if it were about to shatter. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room. "Run!" Dante didn't hesitate. He shot through the strange scenery, trying to understand where he was. The floating constructions seemed to move, changing shape as he went. Bright-eyed creatures watched him run, but didn't interfere. A metal door appeared in front of him, open just enough for him to pass through. He slipped inside and closed it behind him. "Who are you?" Dante gasped, staring at the silhouette of a man hiding in the shadows. "Someone who wants to help you get out of here before it's too late," the voice replied. "You don't understand, but this place doesn't follow the rules, you know. And if you stay too long, You'll become something else. Dante felt a shiver run down his spine. How different! The shadow moved, and Dante could see its face. It was him. Once again. But this time, his eyes were completely black. The air inside the room was thick, charged with something invisible, something that pressed against Dante's mind. The man in front of him, or rather, the distorted version of himself, watched him in silence. Those black eyes, empty like a bottomless pit, seemed to suck him into something he didn't want to know. Dante swallowed. "What do you want from me?" The black reflection smiled, but its lips moved unnaturally. "You already know the answer. You're changing. You're becoming something more. Something better." Dante's consciousness wavered for a moment. The walls of the room flickered, as if they were just projections of a fragile reality. He blinked and for a moment saw flashes of images. The warehouse, the portal, his own hand, but something was wrong. His skin seemed translucent, as if it were dissolving into the fabric of that impossible world. "No," Dante stammered, clutching the edge of a nearby table. "I'm real. I am me. For now." The other Dante tilted his head, his black eyes shining with infinite malice. "But you feel it, don't you?" Voices. The echo of something that wasn't meant to be in your mind. The things you see when you close your eyes. He was right. Ever since he'd stepped through the portal, something had been different. Thoughts that didn't belong to him came out of nowhere. Words he didn't understand, but which seemed familiar, whispered in his consciousness. And the worst part, a part of him didn't want to resist. There was a strange temptation in that feeling of fragmentation, as if dissolving into the fabric of that world was the answer to a riddle he didn't know he was trying to solve. "I can show you what lies beyond," the reflection said, stepping forward. "I can teach you to see what's really behind the veil. All you have to do is let go." The air around Dante curved. The shadows in the room stretched, and reality seemed to oscillate between dimensions. He closed his eyes, fighting vertigo. His heart was pounding. Oh, he couldn't give in. Suddenly, a crack cut through the air like distant thunder, and the door to the room opened abruptly. A hand grabbed his arm, pulling him out before he could react. Reality spun around him as he was dragged down a narrow corridor, the lights flashing violently. "You can't hear what he says," a stranger's voice growled next to him. Dante looked at his savior, a man with stern features, tired eyes and a crumpled badge pinned to his jacket. An illegible name flickered on the badge, but Dante recognized something in the stranger's expression. Fear and urgency. "Who the hell are you?" Dante gasped as he was pushed through a metal door. The man locked the door behind them and turned around. "My name is Elias Ward. I used to work on the Janus project. And if you want to get out of here alive, you're going to have to listen to me very carefully." Dante gasped, his mind still spinning with the presence of his distorted reflection. "What's happening to me? What was that?" Elias pressed his lips together. "The portal isn't just a path between worlds. It's a filter. And it doesn't always work as it should. Some things get through without being seen. And some enter people." Dante felt his stomach turn. "Am I infected?" Elias' gaze was dark. "Not yet. But it's close. You need to get out of here before it's too late. And there's only one way to do that." Dante took a deep breath. "And what is that?" Elias opened a panel in the wall, revealing a complex set of wiring and keyboards. "We have to find the source, the point of origin of this anomaly, and destroy it, before it destroys you." Dante closed his eyes for a moment. He knew there was no turning back. Not after going through that portal. Not after looking into the eyes of something that shouldn't exist. He opened his eyes and nodded. "Then let's get it over with." Dante felt the throbbing pain in his mind as he tried to understand what he had just witnessed. His other self, or whatever that was, had disappeared into the darkness, but his words echoed in his head. "If you stay too long, you will become something different." The man who had rescued him turned on a flashlight, revealing a claustrophobic, metallic corridor. "We need to move." They know you're here. Dante took a deep breath, swallowing his fear. Who are they? What is this place? The man gave him a serious look before answering. We call it the labyrinth. It's an overlapping of realities. With every wrong choice, you lose yourself a little more. Until there's nothing left of you. Dante shuddered. And how do we get out of here? There is a way out, but you have to trust me. The man began to walk quickly down the corridor, with Dante close behind. The walls vibrated slightly, and sometimes shadows seemed to move around the corner of his vision. The path ahead split into 3 directions. The man stopped, closed his eyes for a moment, and without hesitation, chose the door on the left. Don't look back and follow exactly in my footsteps. Dante obeyed, but the sensation of something watching them was unbearable. He resisted the urge to turn around until an icy whisper ran through his ear. Dante, his body froze. He turned despite the warning, and what he saw made his blood run cold. At the end of the corridor, standing in the darkness, was himself, or at least a version of him. His eyes completely black, his smile distorted. Don't go with him, said the copy. He wants to use you. The real way out is this way. Dante felt his mind split between the promise of salvation and his guide's warning. His breathing became heavy. What was real? What was a trap? The man in front turned around. Dante. His voice sounded urgent. Choose now. Dante hesitated for a second that seemed like an eternity. The man in front held out his hand, while his own shadowy copy waited in the shadows. His heart was pounding, and every fiber of his being was screaming at him to choose correctly. With a sudden impulse, he took a step towards the guide. The distorted copy let out a high-pitched scream, and the darkness around him seemed to vibrate, as if reality itself was shattering. The man grabbed Dante's arm and pulled him along, running down the corridor. Behind them, the copy began to crumble, as if it were made of liquid shadow. Dante looked back for a moment and saw his own face deforming, the black eyes expanding until they swallowed everything around them. Don't stop, shouted the guide. We're close. They passed through a series of metal doors, each one closing automatically behind them. The pressure in their ears increased, as if they were going through layers of existence itself. Then finally, they came to a large chamber illuminated by a pulsating blue glow. In the center was a circular structure, the portal. Dante felt a mixture of relief and terror. Will that take us back? The man nodded. Yes, but it has to be now. The collapse has begun. Behind them, the corridor began to twist, the walls shaking as if something was trying to break through them. Dante took a deep breath, feeling the energy vibrating in the air. He turned towards the portal, but at the last moment, he heard one last voice coming from the darkness. You'll never be the same again. He ignored the warning and jumped into the light. Dante arrived at the original Janus Project facility, panting, his whole body vibrating from the crossing. He staggered forward and grabbed a table for balance. The red warning lights flashed, and the monitor showed unstable readings. The system was on the verge of collapse. He knew what he needed to do. There was a single command capable of bringing everything to an end, a total shutdown of the portal. But when his fingers touched the keyboard, a shiver ran down his spine. The voice whispered again. If you do that, you too will be erased. You are no longer just you. Dante shivered. He could feel it. Fragments of other people's thoughts swirled in his mind. Visions of worlds that weren't his. Echoes of existences he had never lived. And inside him, something resisted. Something that didn't want to be destroyed. You can reign over multiple realities, Dante. The voice was seductive. Be a god among men. You just have to accept it. For a moment he hesitated. The possibilities danced before his eyes. But then he remembered. Of the horrors he had seen. Of the entities that had come through. What would happen if it continued? With a final sigh, he typed in the final sequence and pressed enter. The installation shook violently. The portal began to collapse, pulling everything with it. Dante screamed as an indescribable pain ripped through his mind, as if he were being torn into infinite fragments. Then everything went dark. When he woke up, he was in his apartment. His computer was off, untouched. The clock on the wall showed exactly the same time as when he first hacked into the system. Everything seemed normal. For a moment, he breathed a sigh of relief. Was it all a delusion? A nightmare? He touched his face, looked around, feeling whole. But then something made him freeze. In the reflection of the dark computer screen, her face smiled at him. Only it wasn't smiling. Dante blinks hesitantly. Slowly, he turns to the mirror next to the desk. His reflection is still smiling. Then, without moving his lips, he whispers, "Welcome back. If you like this story and want to follow more content like this, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss anything new. The unknown still has a lot to teach us."